The election is over. Headlines. And speaking of headlines, I've asked each of you to author a headline that would kind of summarize, for you anyway, what the 2010 election was all about. Brent, we're going to you first.
Well, I've been saying it ever since about 8 or 9 o'clock on Tuesday night, with the exception of the governor. Just wow, because not only the victories that the Republicans had, but the size of those victories was just it was jaw-dropping, in my opinion.
Mary Ellen?
Well, I think it would have to be Florida, consumed by the Republican wave. Just same thing we've seen across the nation.
Okay, John?
Yeah, it's a red state tide. Florida has gone big time Republican.
You sound like an Alabama supporter. And David?
Is it as simple as let's get to work? We're going to find out.
You've got to have a governor that has a background of talking to business people. That's all I've done all my life. I started out with no money, no connections, bought my first business at 21, and I built businesses for 35 years, 36 years now. So that's all I'm going to, not all, primarily what I'm going to do is go talk to business people and say, what are your problems? Why don't you expand here? And I'll tell you, traveling in the last 6 months in the campaign trail, it's just story after story where people want to do something and there's these state restrictions. It doesn't make any sense.
Marco Rubio seemed to be steamrolling the field. Mm-hmm. And then the governor changed from Republican to independent. And some are saying that he took his wind out of Marco's sails, and things kind of slowed down for Marco. Is that accurate?
No, the governor didn't change from Republican to independent. Marco chased him out of the primary and then all the way out of the party, out of the stadium and down the street. The dynamic that I think that matters most in that race, to me, is how Kendrick Meek does, because if a large enough number of Democrats decide that Kendrick Meek is not going to be the United States Senator from Florida, and that the real choice is between Marco Rubio and Charlie Crist, they'll vote for Charlie Crist. If Kendrick Meek demonstrates that, or at least makes people believe that he could win, then I think the Democrats will go home and Charlie will find the air pretty thin because he may not be able to cut deep enough into the Republicans. And so, in a weird way, a perverse reverse way, I think Charlie's fate is in Kendrick's hands.
The long and short of it is the Gulf spill has caused an economic impact that will be felt for years and years. The oil is shut off, but the lingering effects are there. The big unknown is still what has the oil underneath the surface with the dispersants. What has that done to the long-term health of the Gulf? The economic impact is obviously according to the health, but also to all of these folks whose business income has gone down as a result of people not coming to the Gulf, not buying Gulf fish, and all the myriad businesses and personal incomes that have been diminished as a result of this oil spill. And this is where you will see that Ken Feinberg has his act in order to get all of these claims paid so that people will have some income that they have lost.
I think if you are elected, you're going to continue to push for the current Attorney General's, Mr. McCollum's, point of view and lawsuit on the federal health care law. And I wish you would talk about why this is important to you, why you think that the people of the state of Florida should have this lawsuit go forward, and then maybe what is the legal theory for the lawsuit?
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly will continue with the health care lawsuit. I say I take on murderers and I will take on the federal government in this health care takeover, because that's exactly what it is. And many people don't realize that as chief legal officer for the state of Florida, not only is your job as Attorney General to protect the citizens, but also to protect our constitutional rights and our 10th Amendment rights as a state, meaning our sovereign rights in Florida. and what's happening with the healthcare litigation. And I attended the oral arguments that were just held recently in Pensacola, where the Department of Justice attempted to dismiss this healthcare lawsuit. The lawsuit, of course, is being headed up by Florida, which I'm very proud that Florida's taken the lead in this healthcare litigation. 19 other states have joined in, but General McCollum has taken the lead, and I am committed to following through with this healthcare lawsuit because it affects our rights as a state. And it's much broader even than health care. But what the federal government's doing is they're coming in and they're saying basically that they can regulate an inactivity, that simply by being alive and breathing air, that they can force us under the Commerce Clause to purchase a good, meaning health care. Then if we refuse to purchase that good, they will fine or penalize us. And that is unconstitutional.
Just for our viewers, you said something that was very much legal in nature, but then you clarified it, but I want people to hear this. Regulate an inactivity.
Yes.
What does that really mean?
Okay, the Commerce Clause says that the federal government can regulate activity between states and that they can regulate our activity. An inactivity is basically us being alive, and that they can tell us to purchase a product.
That would be an insurance policy.
Insurance policy. And if we don't purchase that product, we will be fined or penalized. The cases say that the Commerce Clause can regulate activity. So simply by being alive, they can force us to purchase insurance.
Representative Cannon, I wish you would describe your colleague here for our viewers, because sometimes, you know, you're not very well known outside of your district. So would you describe Senator Herodopoulos to our viewers?
If I were going to describe Mike to somebody who'd never met him, I'd say, number one, he's a thoughtful man. He cares deeply about his family, his community. You know, he's dedicated himself to teaching others, and especially in the area of learning the lessons of history. And he's just the kind of person that if you were a new resident coming to Florida, I'd say you want this guy making policy decisions for our state. He and his family and I have spent time together outside of Tallahassee, and when you get to know somebody and see how they are around their wife and kids, you know them as a person, as a husband, as a dad, and I think Florida's very lucky to have Mike be the incoming Senate President.
And what's so great when I talk to Dean, he does his homework. He knows exactly what's going on. He's methodical. He's always talking about his members and their priorities. And what's so important in this business, and we've seen so often people who kind of just follow polls, he's the North Star. There's no doubt in the House where he is coming from. He's been there since day one. And when he was campaigning, there was no doubt in my mind that he would move to the leadership in the House because he's methodical, he's intelligent, he's prepared. And that's so important in this business because you have a 2-year window of opportunity, and Dean has prepared himself for this. And by listening, I think of the Book of James, and I think of Dean Cannon. Be slow to speak, slow to anger, quick to listen.
I heard recently on Morning Joe, or saw it, a pundit from Washington, very interesting person, who does a list of the most powerful, most influential people in Washington, D.C. She talks to senators, congressmen, congresswomen, lobbyists, reporters, and she was giving them a list of the 5 most powerful people in Washington after the election. And guess who was number 3 on that list?
I know, teacher.
Who was it?
Can I guess?
Yes.
Marco Rubio?
Marco Rubio.
Oh, my gosh.
Marco Rubio. Number 3 out of all of the people that could have been named, he was named number 3. Now, let's start with you, Brent, since you were such a good student. Why would you think that would be?
Well, if he wins the election out of Florida, the 4th largest state in the Union, I mean, right away, he's a Republican, a conservative Republican. He kind of fits right into that notch where the voter mood seems to be right now, and he's an attractive, bright guy that I can see exactly how, just commenting to Dave during the break, that if he gets elected, he's probably on all the Sunday morning shows the Sunday after the election, so he gets a pretty quick start.
He's got a couple things going for him. As Brent mentioned, 4th largest state. It's not just the 4th largest state, but it's the 4th largest state that will be in play for 2012, okay? And then he's also got that he is going to be probably the most prominent Hispanic in office. when Mel Martinez left, that was a huge loss. So he will be a go-to person in that way. And then he's associated himself with sort of this new conservative movement.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about Marco Rubio, and I think that if he wins again, solidifies his place in as a potentially a rising national icon, and that is he's a Tea Party guy. The right wing of his party and some of these independents who aren't even really Republicans, but they're very conservative. They love Marco Rubio. But he's also very comfortable with the sort of intellectual wing of the Republican Party, the not so populist wing. Marco is a smart guy, and a lot of Marco's conservatism is based on ideas and sort of intellectual conservatism, and that's a separate group of that party from the populist Tea Party group, and he somehow has managed to pull both of those people in, those groups in, and they both like him, and I think he...
In large part right out of Governor Bush's workshop.
Yeah, and I think he becomes, watch for his name to be mentioned as a presidential candidate in the future for all of the reasons that we've just talked about.
If you cut services, essential services, the argument goes, that government provides, education, social services, etc., will decline in quality and availability for citizens. And that quality of life decline, if you will, could also inhibit companies coming to a state or coming to a community. What's your view? I mean, we're facing a shortfall of $3 billion, and if you come in and you say, well, I'm going to deal with that, but I'm also going to cut some more revenue sources on top of that, some people would say, you just can't do it. What's your view?
Absolutely. I mean, look, corporate America has had to do it for years. When you go to Walmart, you don't say, gosh, I'm going to go pay a little bit more money for something because they have, for any reason, because it was made in America versus China or anything like that. What corporate America has done for years is constantly think about how can I do this less expensively? How can I get better outcomes? How can I have better service at a lower cost? Our governments have to do the same thing, whether it's state, federal, or local. We're not doing that enough. There's plenty of dollars to be saved. You hear story after story after story on the campaign trail of people saying, you know what, I went to the state and I showed them that they could save 30%. But nobody was interested. I've talked to people in agencies and said, if you really could control how you spent all your money, how much could you save? The numbers were staggering. There's a lot of money to be saved. And as we save those dollars and reduce our taxes, we'll be a more interesting state for people to move to. We need to go back to being the growth state we were, where we had people came here not only because of the weather, not only because of our beaches, not only because they didn't pay income tax, but because all of our taxes and fees were lower. Our insurance rates were lower. And government has caused all those things to go up the last few years.
So you're saying transfer money from government to the private sector and send out a message, I'm just paraphrasing you here, to corporate America, the water's fine here, we want you. And you think that will...
We're open for business.
That's the heart of your message, a big part of it.
I believe in private sector jobs. We're open for business. My wife and I sponsored a healthcare project over in Kenya a few years ago for about 4 years. And at the end of it, we did a lot of good things. We dealt with dysentery, malaria, things like that. They all needed jobs.
Well, unfortunately, we saw it coming. Just a few weeks ago, the governor said he strongly supported the bill. For whatever reason, he changed his mind, but hey, he's the governor. He has every right to do it under our Florida Constitution. But I think it's an idea that's coming. I mean, we obviously need to have merit pay. You need to reward people for doing an outstanding job and make sure we have the best quality teachers. What we'll do is go back to the drawing board over the summer into the fall, sit down with teachers and parents and principals and come up with a better way to do it. I think the biggest thing is I think in concept everyone agrees on it. Maybe some people thought it went too fast, too slow, who knows. But it's an idea that will come because people need teachers to be the highest quality, and teachers who go above and beyond the call deserve to be compensated for it.